Hello. I'm just setting up. Wait, I'm just gonna pin. Stick with me while I just set this up for a second. Oh, I see. Okay, so I'm being joined by Dr. Jessi Gold. So I think she has to request to join. Here we go. Wait. Okay, one sec. All right. Hi, everyone. I am Ilana Wiles. Some of you know me as Mommy Shorts. I also run Average Parent Problems, and I am going to have a discussion today with Dr. Jessi Gold about the social and emotional effects of going back to school on our kids. I know that's like a very heavy topic, so I'm just going to have her join me right now. Wait, where is that? This whole conversation is in partnership with MedIQ, and I'm just going to read. I don't want to get this wrong. They have an educational grant from the Coverys Healthcare Foundation. So they basically, where is that information? Oh, so they are an accredited medical education company that provides educational experience for healthcare professionals and patients. So they set this up, and I'm really excited. Oh, look at all those hearts. That's so nice. So I'm really excited to talk to Dr. Jessi Gold. So wait, there we go. Wait, view, go, waiting. I hope this works. Last time I tried to do a live, it got all messed up. Oh, there she is.
Hello.
Hi. Wait, I'm going to wait to make sure they can see my face. Okay, there
Did
we
it,
are. But
is that working?
I think it's working.
Okay,
All right.
good. That's always good.
Hi, how are you?
I'm all right. How are you?
I'm good. This is my first time doing a live on Average Parent Problems I actually tried to do it once and I had a bad connection, but I think it's okay at the moment. So,
I'm trying to not use my Wi-Fi and just use my phone, so I thought that would maybe be better, but we'll see.
right. Well, everyone, this is Dr. Jessi Gold. Why don't you tell us a little bit about who you are and what your credentials are to talk about this stuff?
Sure. I'm an assistant professor in the Department of Psychiatry at Washington University in St. Louis. I see patients outpatient in psychiatry and primarily see college and graduate students. I also see healthcare workers and like sort of the gamut of the healthcare worker environment, so staff all the way up. So I see the parents in that thing. And I'm very interested in this topic and have been hearing a lot from both sides. So parents and kids about back to school, sort of the big kids side, I guess. So 16, 17 and on up, but have a lot of experience the other way too. So
Yeah, I have a 7-year-old and a 10-year-old, so I'm on the littler side. And obviously, I think there's a lot of parents that are sending their kids to school for the first time for kindergarten. So that's, I think, like a big topic as well, how going into a new school environment. But I always like to say I'm not an expert in anything, so it's nice to have a actual expert to talk to. So I think first I want to say that we're not, just to be clear to everybody watching, we're not saying, whether you should send your kids back to school or not. This is more of a conversation about either side, like just how to handle the emotional and, all the stress that comes with it. Whether there's going to be stresses for kids who are in school, there are going to be stresses for kids who are virtual. There's tons of stress on parents. I think it's nice to talk about the stresses on parents as well. I think you can tell even by how I'm talking now that I am currently stressed about this. I have tons of questions. I actually wrote a whole bunch of them down because I wanted to make sure that that I got all those, got them all in there. So should we dive in?
sounds good to me.
I think one of the main things that keeps coming up amongst my friends and for me is there's so much uncertainty. And some people have already started school. We should say that as well. We're supposed to start school right after Labor Day. And I think even right now, we're not exactly sure what's going to happen. Their schools have certain plans, but I kind of in the back of my mind think that it's all going to change at the last minute. So sort of I'm trying to figure out how to prep my kids for, obviously kids thrive on routine. So it's like, how do you prep your kids for what the school year is going to look like when you don't really know, and it could, change at any instant. And then to sort of add to that, I feel like there's other pieces, like there's tons of kids that are doing hybrid situations, and hybrid is like the opposite of routine. So it's like all of a sudden you're sending your kid for maybe 1 to 2 days a week. So how do you instill like a sense of normalcy or routine with kids when there's so much uncertainty?
Yeah. So I'd start by saying that this is really hard for everybody and is not normal for everyone. There's no normal. We don't know what that looks like. We've never experienced this. It's very uncomfortable, stressful, hard, inducing. Absolutely everything you're feeling is normal. Anything your kids are feeling is normal too. And I think that's something that I like to put out there up front, because I think people really struggle with things, and I as a psychiatrist, really like talking about them. Uncertainty is basically the enemy of all things. So we love to know things. We want answers so badly, but it turns out we don't typically have answers to things. We just think we do. So we have to learn to sort of sit with this really uncomfortable feeling of not knowing. So we often I really want to know what's happening tomorrow. I really want to be able to plan for our vacation. I really want to be able to plan for what does school look like? What does it? But we don't really know that all the time anyway. We just thought we did. So right now, since we don't, it just really feels uncomfortable. So we have to learn to live with, we call it psychological flexibility, which is how can we learn to be okay with uncertainty and be still moving forward? So it is not what I want to be doing, but this is the best that I can do, and this is what it looks like right now. I am never going to have the answers, and I kind of need to live day by day. What does that look like? People who had chronic illness, the recovery community, have lived day by day by day by day for a really long time, and well, it helps kids to sort of be what's today like? What are we going to do today? What does today look like? Instead of a lot of planning, because planning is really hard right now. And that psychological flexibility piece actually is protective, and it's seen to be a resilient factor. So if you get kids to be able to be I don't know, and that's okay that I don't know, and I'd like to know, but I don't, you'll actually be pretty successful.
So do you think that the need to be in control is more of a parent thing and kids are better with rolling with it? Or, I feel like I have one kid that can kind of roll with it, and the other who really needs to be prepared. So I think it's my younger one, I feel like I struggle with more, where she's a planner, and I think if she thinks one thing is going to happen, and then all of a sudden I'm like, it's going to happen.
Yeah.
Gets very...
Sorry, we decided to have a knock on my door and my dog barking at the same time, just to make it fun for everybody.
Well, that was planned, I guess.
I'm living with the uncertainty of what it's like for me to do psychiatry at home. Right. Now you guys can too. Oh man, I can tell you, it's a really fun time to be live while my dog is barking incessantly. Winnie, stop it. Nope, not going to.
Do you need to get the door? I want to
Do I want to get the door? I don't know.
Do you have to?
I don't think so. But I heard what you said. So parents, I think, are much more into how can we protect our kids? And so we really want to be able to know things to protect our kids. But sometimes when we're anxious, we can make our kids anxious, because we think if I could say this is how I'm feeling and this is what's going on with me, it sometimes projects onto our children, because it's this is what I'm going through, and I don't necessarily mean to, but when I'm worried and all these thoughts are in my head, if I'm over preparing and over planning and overthinking, my kids actually kind of pick up on that, even if I'm not talking about all the really stressful stuff or the sad stuff or the anxiety inducing stuff that's going on in my head. Just simply the over planning, kids can pick up on. So I think there are ways that we can, as parents, make our kids more anxious. But I would say that there are definitely kids who do, like you're saying, benefit from the extra planning or are anxious themselves, right? So, anxiety happens it's a personality trait, but it's also like people have anxiety disorders at young ages. So being able to roll with it for whichever kid there is and say like, you know, this kid seems to need more preparation. This kid seems to kind of feel okay being like super resilient and super okay. And like, maybe I'll try to lay off that kid and see what happens. And then if that kid asks for help, see what happens from there. Sometimes it helps to just have like an open conversation where you're like, school is going to be different, and I am uncomfortable with how school's going to be different, and I'll tell you why I'm uncomfortable, but how are you feeling about it? And you can even do that with like the younger kids. And how will I know that you want to talk about it? And what would it be helpful for me to check in? Like how often? And what would be a way for me to check in that won't make it feel like I'm being annoying or make it feel like I'm putting my anxiety on you, and really just checking with their kids that way. Because I think even little kids like are pretty able to say like, yeah, it's really annoying when you ask me all the time, like how I'm doing. Like, I'm fine. I went to school. I saw my friends. They're still there. We just have to wash our hands a lot. It's not fun, but I adapted, because kids are pretty adaptive for the most part.
Yeah. It was interesting. I was telling my younger one, I was trying to prep her for what school might look like, because she's someone who's like, I wish they would do like sort of a visual presentation of, you know, like just like take you through like a virtual walkthrough of the school, be like, this is what 6 feet apart with the desks look like. You know, this is what your classroom looks like right now. This is what lunch is going to look like. I feel like that would be so helpful to just have this like visual tour almost. But I don't know what's going to happen. So I'm just trying to prep her for, you know, what, and it was interesting because I thought one of the things that she was going to be really upset about is their school is usually set up more with like they're at like sort of communal tables together, or they can sit in bean bags. Like there's a lot of like options seating wise for them. It's not like traditional desks. So one of the things I said to her was, and I thought that was going to be like awful to tell her, like there's going to be a desk that you have to sit at and pretty much spend the whole day there. And she was like, I get to have my own desk. She's so excited because it's something different, you know? So yeah, I guess you don't, some of the things that you think your kids might be scared of might be okay. But then, I don't know. I read sort of like a horrific article that was talking about how tough it's going to be for kids to be sitting, you know, at a desk with a mask on.
Yeah.
And, you know, I don't know. I guess this sort of leads up into my next question is like, how do you prepare your kids for like really giving them a good sense of what school is going to look like so they're not surprised, but then not scaring them?
Yeah, I mean, I think, you know, one of the things that we do take for granted is that like masks are easy for everybody to wear. I think that like when we see people not wearing them, we just assume it's because they chose not to, not because they're actually worried about them or it was hard for them or it made them nervous. So sometimes we actually have to like teach our kids how to wear masks. So that might mean that like before school, you actually had to like practice wearing a mask at home and try to make it fun and play games around wearing masks, especially if they have to wear it all day. And usually like you live in the suburbs and there's space and they didn't have to wear a mask. And then all of a sudden you're wearing a mask all the time. Like really just like making it fun. I've heard of like a friend that taught their kid like what emotions look like behind masks, like just kind of wearing a mask, and the kid wore a mask and then they played games like what does mad look like, what does sad look like, and then they had each other like guess, and so they could try to learn like what emotions look like behind masks. Because you know that's one of the things that's really hard for the younger kids is like we learn a lot from facial expressions. You know, I'm a psychiatrist, we practice so much in facial expressions, but like when it's covered you only get eyes, and so it's really hard to tell as a kid who's like sort of searching for cues, like what people are feeling. And so, you know, by having like playing games where you sort of learn by looking at their eyes and like try to tell what that means, it can help people get more comfortable with feelings through just your eyes. And I think that was a good idea. I think, you know, I think trying to give as much information as you think is necessary, but maybe not over giving the information. Yeah. I think you know all your kids as much as you do. I think there's probably good worry and bad worry. And I think that there's, you know, like planning definitely helps. Like, I think you're not in a bad place to say that like, I planned and I helped my kid prepare and I gave them the tools to feel like they knew what they were going into. But I think there are definitely things you can't control, like, are all the other kids going to follow it? So like bringing that up, not as helpful. Bringing up like what the room is going to look like, more helpful. So kind of trying to weigh like what are the helpful things to bring up and might be actually worthwhile to talk to your kid about versus like what is just going to induce more anxiety in your kid. Like, what are the other parents doing and what are the other kids doing? You can't control those. So that's just going to make your kid super anxious, like thinking about it, you know?
Yeah. I definitely like, I feel like this summer felt somewhat normal. We're in New York. Like, I think it was, it was really bad in March, April, June. And then this summer has felt a little bit, we're still like at home and like social distancing and all that stuff. But because we can go outside and ride bikes and, it just feels, I feel like the kids were sort of tricked into feeling like there's not that much of a problem at the moment. And when they go back to school, all of a sudden it's going to feel like we're in a pandemic again. So it's just, trying to, I kind of recognize that because we were home this whole time, like we weren't wearing a mask or, doing all these like new protocols really because there wasn't a need for it while we were home. So we actually started like, we went to the store the other day so like they can practice. So I think that's a really good idea. And we did notice like, when you're outside trying to do things with a mask and it's hot, that's a lot harder than if you're like in an air conditioned space. That felt much more normal.
Or like around a lot of people versus your family, which is safe, So like,
right.
I think it's like these different scenarios are pretty scary for different reasons, or, like it's also helpful if they pick out their own masks and it's kind of like a cool item of clothing, So it's like, kids really like going shopping for clothes before school and backpacks and like notebooks and things like that. And we're kind of stuck with the mask being that item for this year. So
Right.
like back to school mask shopping might be something you could hype up in a way that might make kids feel excited because there are like Disney masks and like superhero masks and they are trying to make that somewhat fun for kids. So I mean, if you're stuck wearing one, you might as well wear one you think is cool or one that's funny or makes it like you picked it out so you're not forced. It's like a cool clothing item.
Agreed. And then I don't want to just talk about kids who are going back to school because I feel like there are tons of kids obviously that are doing a school remote or doing the hybrid plan, or we could go back to school for 2 weeks and then we're all back remote again, who knows. So how do we prepare our kids? Wait, where was my question? Where is it? Oh, okay, so for parents choosing remote while other kids are back. For parents choosing remote while other kids are back to school. So, okay, so there are some people who have chosen to go remote, but their school is going back. So they will have friends in class, but they're going to be virtual. So how do you help those kids still feel like they're connected and not left out?
I think you have to plan social activities for them. I mean, I think socializing in like whatever sense is safe, like physically safe, disease safe, is one of the ways that we're also resilient. Like our social connections are really the way we survive as humans, even if we're introverted and we only want one close friend. So I think as like little kids, that might mean parents have to plan it. As older kids, they might have to plan it themselves, even if they're the kind of kid that likes to stumble outside and find a friend and that's who they eat dinner with and that's how it works. It's more like I have to actively think about the fact that I'm not in class all day with my friends, so I actually had no social connection at all for weeks or days. And so in order for my kid to see friends or people, I actually have to do something. So whether that is not in person because you aren't comfortable with your kid being in person, then you need to plan a Zoom or you need to plan some kind of activity that feels fun. So your kid's not like, my parent is the one that hates me and doesn't want me to go back to school. Because I know that like I have a couple of like older patients that parents are healthcare workers and they're like, oh, my parents are so much more annoying about hand washing and masks and everything compared to all my friends' parents. And I feel like
Right.
I get it, but like, and so I mean, it makes sense. I mean, I'm a doctor, I get it, but I think it makes it really hard when all these people have different expectations and you're just a kid and want to see your friends and you can't necessarily like weigh all of these different things and expectations. You just want to see your friend. That's your goal. So
Right.
you just need to help them find ways to do that where you feel okay with it and they will still know that they still have that friend and they didn't lose that friend, which is probably what they're most worried about anyways. They don't really, I mean, maybe they're really excited to go back to like the school part, but I bet they're much more like afraid that they have like FOMO, you know?
Right. Yeah. I think, I mean, one thing I noticed with my older daughter, with my 10-year-old, is that, and I don't know if this is like a generational thing, but I was expecting her, because she has access to an iPad. They all have like email addresses, so they can facilitate their own like FaceTimes and all that stuff. But she wasn't really doing it. It's more like playing on Roblox, and she'll play on Roblox like with her friend, or um, she's begging me to join Snapchat. I don't want her to join Snapchat because that's what her friends are communicating on. They're watching. She does have TikTok though, so she's watching TikToks with her, like, you know, watching whatever. I don't know if they send each other these things or they just watching each other's TikToks. But I feel like her way of being social right now is very different from how I was a kid. And I'm always like, why aren't you like on a phone with your friends talking? But it's like they have to like be FaceTiming while playing some sort of game. And I don't know whether that's healthy or it's different, you know?
Both. I mean, I think as a I think as a psychiatrist, like I used to always be like, we need to limit social media time, we need to cut down screen time, we need to make sure people are like not there all the time because there's studies that say it can make you sad and make you anxious, right? But I think a lot of that is thrown out the window when that's the only way people are seeing people. So I think you have to say like, okay, that data makes no sense when that's all you have because that's the best way to communicate. But I do think you have to say, like, are we very lucky we live in a day and age where we can do this? And this is like a real video conversation. And this feels a lot more like a conversation in human form than a text or a game conversation. Yes. So we also have to say, like, listen, we get that you're playing games and you might feel like you're somewhat connected to your friends, but like we know even from our own socializing that we don't actually feel connected to our friends unless we see them. So it would be nice if we like planned some activities where you actually saw your friends over video or, you know, we saw them at 6
Right.
feet or whatever, because I do think they kind of are just used to shooting off a text message or shooting off a game conversation and thinking that that's enough, but you don't get that same like human experience or like eye contact or empathy or like any kind of connection when it's just words.
Yeah. And I think the other thing to piggyback on that is my older daughter, my 10-year-old, I feel like she is okay. Like she seems okay when she's just like on Roblox and talking with her friends that way or, you know, on TikTok or whatever it is. But then we did organize like a socially distant play date with a couple of friends. Like we were in a backyard and she left that being like, oh my God, I miss my friends so much. Like, I feel like, so that's something to be aware of, is that sometimes your kid seems okay because I think if they're attached to a screen and they're doing all this stuff, it's very easy to occupy your time and not complain, but they still might really be missing that connection. They just need to be maybe reminded. Although that's kind of sad because then you're like, sorry, you're still not going to see them as often. But,
yeah, I mean, I think we're all pretty bad at like recognizing feelings and what's going on with us because it's really easy to focus on other people or focus on activities. I'm sure parents feel like that too. I mean, if you're like go, 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 go all the time and you're like, I'm going to take care of this kid and then do work and then take care of my like partner and then move in and then whatever. When do you actually go, wait, like, am I doing all of that because I need to, because I feel like I have to, because that's my position, or like, what am I feeling right now? And a lot of that ends up actually being like kind of a coping strategy, because if you actually stop and breathe, then you're like, oh, wait, hold on. Like when I breathe, then I actually have feelings and I don't know that I want these feelings because they're heavy and it's hard. And this has been really hard, but you gotta go through it, honestly. And so I think that kids kind of have that, but maybe are less aware too and haven't like named them or gone
it's
through
true.
that really.
All of these games and YouTube and all that stuff, it's like the ultimate distraction. So yeah, I mean, I notice that with myself at night. If I'm getting stressed out, I'll go on my phone and, do some sort of mindless activity. or, you know, start reading things or whatever. Some of it makes me more stressed out, but, but it is like, it's a way to sort of, you know, separate from your own thoughts. So I guess we have to recognize that our kids are doing that by being on their iPads all the time too. It also makes me concerned, and I don't know if this is something you can speak to, but like I worry so much about how are we ever going to roll back all of this added screen time? Because it's like, it's, you know, it's school, it's their social lifeline. It's also like now we're like watching much more TV as a family. Like I don't know how I think there's so many things that I'm letting my kids do. Like my younger daughter is now, I let her like join Roblox where she never did that before. I never let them play those games with their friends. It was always like they couldn't be like connected to the server, and now they are. You know, I let my oldest join TikTok. Like I just feel like there's so many, we've been so permissible about this stuff. This is just like, it is what it is, and that's just, like you're never be able to take it away, or I don't know, maybe parent you can.
Yeah, you either call it like the pandemic bogey year, and then you make them really mad when you take it all away. But I think you have to apply it pretty universally and go, that was just the pandemic rules, and then you do all and erase it all. Or if you kind of like spotty apply it, I think it would be pretty obvious which things you chose to like take back and not, I think, but I'm not sure.
Okay, let me look at some of my other question I hear. Oh, okay, here's a good one. So there's a ton of kids, families that are joining new schools this year, whether it's like your kids are just entering kindergarten, or I know a ton of my friends' kids are entering a middle school at this point, or maybe a lot of people have moved and are switching schools. How do you enter a new school, like a new social network, when either if you're virtual or if you're, you know, trying to make your kid comfortable entering a school where they're not allowed to, you know, touch anyone, or, you know, everyone's wearing masks. What's the best way? What advice do you have for those families?
I don't envy them. I mean, it's really hard to do new things all the time, and transitions are really hard on everybody all of the time. It's like often some of the most stressful stuff for adults too, you know? And I think you just have to take it one step at a time, and you have to probably check in with your kid more than you would want to, and maybe more than they want you to too. You probably also have to check in with the teacher. I think you might also actively have to kind of make sure that they're making friends. I think it might be harder to make friends. I'd imagine it's harder to make friends when you're like separate from people, especially if you're quiet, because even if, like, as a person who's quite gregarious, I can imagine that I would even have trouble with like what you're supposed to do to see the new kid and interact with them. And like, I'd probably try, but I would feel like it would have been quite hard to figure out how to integrate them into your social circle when your social circle is not a real circle. So I think like you probably have to make more active, like, role. You have to play a more active role in the socializing part. I think you have to give yourself some grace and know that you're doing the best you can, and so is your kid. I think it's a little bit of the like good enough parenting that is really hard to be in that mindset, but it is true, which is like parenting theory from like Winnicott, which is like you can't be perfect, and to give yourself some grace to know that. And like you want to be perfect, you want to protect your kid, and you want to say that like nothing bad is ever going to happen, and you're going to make it as best as you can, and you're going to try because you will, because you care about your kid. But like you can only do as much as you can do, and it's a really hard year. So you also have to give yourself, you know, like the space to say like, this is going to be hard on all of us, and I'm doing the best I can.
So on that note, let's talk about parents for a second. Like, what are some common things you're hearing? I'm sorry, let's not talk about parents. Let's talk about like how kids are feeling, I guess.
Yeah.
So
I can talk about parents or kids, your call.
What are some things that you're hearing from kids that they wish their parents would say? Or, you know, how can we better support them emotionally during this time?
Yeah, I mean, I think one of the common things that I hear from my patients that I have to remind them all the time is that parents aren't mind readers, and that we need to talk out loud. Like they will just, I see a lot of like 16, 17, 18-year-olds. They are like, I'm mad. They know I'm mad because I walked upstairs and slammed the door, and that's how they know. And I'm like, but what are you mad about? How do they know that you're mad about them? Like, how do they know what's going on with you if you don't talk to them about what's going on with you? And so we have to have a lot of conversations about how, like, it's not okay to really assume that your parents can guess what's going on. And so I think that they feel the same way, honestly, about parents. Like, I think parents have feelings too. And I think it's okay to say that you do. Like, hiding that this has been hard for you is not necessarily fair either. So I think modeling, like, tolerating negative emotion is just important as like modeling happiness all the time, because it's okay that you're not okay all the time, because that's true. I mean, I think that this is like not a time where it would make sense to be okay all the time, and I think even the little kids, it's okay for them to see that, because you're resilient and you're dealing with it and it's hard, but it's okay. And like having conversations out loud where you're like, even mom is struggling because of this, and like this is how I feel, and like how has it been for you? It makes it more normal to be vulnerable. It makes it more normal to have feelings. It makes it more normal that it's hard for them too. And I think that's really important. And I think they can tell when you're kind of lying, like if you're like really stressed out and you're like, oh, like this is wonderful, this has been awesome, like let me take you to your 45 activities, like it just, they can tell when you're tired and sad, and it would be nice sometimes if you just told them that. So I think that it's okay to say that. I mean, you don't need to focus on you all the time, but I think it's okay to admit that you're like not okay. And I think that's something that parents think that they shouldn't do, but like actually totally can do.
And can you say to them, like, I know going to school, or I know staying home sucks, like it's
Totally.
hard.
I would. I mean, I know a pandemic is not fun. Like, this is horrible. I don't want to be here. I don't want to be working from home. Like, nobody wants to be doing this. I wouldn't want to go to school from home if I was your age either. But unfortunately, that's like what we're stuck with. So how do we make the best out of this? And like, what is a thing that you like to do that we can figure out how to do? And like, how can we come up with things that are fun together? And like, how can we make this doable? Because we can't change some things, right? Like, we can't make a vaccine. I don't think. Maybe someone on this call can. We can't like
I can't personally make a vaccine, but
like we can't fix some of this stuff. There's a pace at which it will go, right? But we can say like there are things that will like help me feel better coping wise, right? And there are things that maybe I used to do coping wise I can't do right now because I can't go outside as much, or like I can't do these big sports things that I used to do. So like, what can I still do? And you just have to like renegotiate what coping looks like. And maybe that's just pandemic coping, but you still have to just kind of find that. That's the same for parents. Like you have to find, you got to find some coping time. We're talking no kid coping time. We're talking solo coping time, self-care time. Like really hard to do when you have lots of kids, and really hard to do when you have work and you're prioritizing all these things. But you have to make time for yourself. It's really gonna catch up to you.
Right. Easier said than done.
Totally easier said than done. Listen, like I wish, like I would love to tell you that like psychiatrists practice what they preach all the time too, but I struggle with this just as much as anybody. I have to go to my own therapy, right? So it's the way that it is. I mean, it's really hard to do, and we all have to balance all these things, and it's really hard at different times, and we hit these like emotional walls all the time where we're like, why am I so tired, and why this week? But it's just like you just have to go like recognize that and take a pause and say like, how can I deal with this?
My friends and I kept talking about how like last spring when we were doing, we're all working from home and helping the kids with school. We were just like, it's amazing how you could like, you're like almost doing nothing, but be so busy and exhausted. And I think one of the things that was so crazy, which is like when you're working the whole time, or when you're trying to help your kids with school, but you also have work to do. So then when school's over, which was like the hardest part of the day for them, then you have to catch up on the work that you missed. And that's when they want to hang out with you for real. And you're like, but I just spent all day helping you with home, with all your schoolwork. I think that's really hard too. It's like, we feel like we're being like, as a parent, I feel like I'm with my kids all the time now, but it's like, they don't count that school time as like mom time, whereas
Yeah.
I'm dedicating I'm dedicating so much of my time and my work time to them, but they don't see it that way. They still want that free time, which is that, I think that's what makes it like really challenging.
Yeah, because you didn't have that time planned in for your whole life. They just made you.
It was hard enough as it was, like just like working while they were in school. And then, yeah, that's a whole other animal, I think. So that's been hard. I feel like my kids have made me feel like guiltier over this time period than they ever used to, when in reality, I'm spending so much more time on them now than when they were in school.
Yeah, that's a very interesting thing they can do. It like is almost like they get too used to it. They can have like separation anxiety for the idea that like they can get less of you because they so liked having so much of you. And I kind of get it. It's nice because it would be nice to see you all the time. And I mean, it means your kids really like you, so that's a plus, I think.
Yeah.
Like, that's my reframe of the situation, which is that your kids really like you. But like, I mean, at a certain point, that's like not okay. They can't do that forever. So
no, it's one of the many, many, many challenges during this time, this unprecedented time, as everybody calls it.
Yeah, it sort of just makes me angry.
Yeah. I mean, everything, I feel like I have, there's so many emotions between like stress and anger and uncertainty, and just, there's a lot. There's a lot happening right now. So I think we're all going through all this stress together, but then also not trying to put the anxiety that we're feeling onto our kids, but then also, as you're saying, not trying to hide it from them either, because obviously then it's just like we're lying to them all the time. So it's a complicated time to be a parent, and probably a complicated time to be a teacher and a doctor and everything. It's complicated for everybody. No, I don't think anyone's got off easy during this.
Yeah. I mean, I think that's like one of the things we maybe don't say out loud, right? Which is like, this is really hard. And I think we sometimes say it in passing and we're like, man, that was a hard day, or that was a hard thing, but it's all really hard. And everything that everybody's doing is like, not to say like, it's not easy. Everything is hard. Nobody knows what you're doing. Nobody is telling you what to do. There's no roadmap, and it's all uncertain, and it's all taking a lot out of all of us. And we just have to have some grace and some like honestly self-compassion about it. Like, I think you'd probably be nicer to other people about everything they're doing than you are to yourself, like if your friend was like, I'm really stressed out and I'm balancing all this, you'd be like, you're doing an awesome job. But when it's you're like, God, I could do better, right? And I think we just have to learn to be like a little nicer to ourselves, and also say like, this is horribly hard and nobody does this, and this is weird, and it's a pandemic, and I'm trying, and do the best you can.
I think we should end on that note, because I feel like giving everyone grace and also being nice to yourself is a really is a good positive to take away from this, and one that we all need to hear. So I want to thank you for coming on this talk with me. This is Dr. Jessi Gold, and I want to thank MedIQ for this conversation. I think it was really helpful for me. I hope it was helpful for everybody listening. And I just want to say good luck to everybody, whatever you're doing in the fall, whether that's going back to school virtually or in person, or, maybe we all wind up virtual again, or maybe it's all good and we all wind back up at school. Who the hell knows? But I wish everybody the best of luck in
me too.
fall, and I wish you luck.
Back at you. I'm following along.
All right. Thanks everybody for watching. Bye.
Bye.